For centuries, the Roman Empire stood at the center of the known world. From the misty shores of Britannia to the golden deserts of Egypt, Rome projected unmatched power. Its armies were feared, its engineers admired, its roads and aqueducts the arteries of an empire that seemed destined to last forever. But behind the marble statues and the grandeur of imperial triumphs, something fragile was forming. Deep cracks in the foundation of Rome's economy. Rome did not collapse because of a single invasion or a single failure. It was undone slowly, methodically, and above all, economically. At the height of its power, Rome thrived on continuous expansion. Every victory brought new land, new slaves, and vast quantities of precious metals back to the capital. Conquest was not merely military, it was fiscal. Gold and silver from Spain, Egypt, and Gaul flowed into Roman treasuries, funding public works, subsidizing grain for the poor, and paying for the greatest standing army in antiquity. But what happens when an empire built on expansion runs out of new worlds to conquer? The answer, in Rome's case, was stagnation. As expansion slowed, the empire's fiscal inflow dried up, yet its expenditures continued to rise. Defending a territory of such vast size required immense spending: soldiers, fortifications, fleets, and supply lines stretching thousands of miles. The military machine, once the engine of prosperity, became a structural burden. To sustain this system, emperors turned to taxation. But the Roman tax burden was severe and increasingly regressive. Small farmers and craftsmen, already living close to subsistence, were crushed by levies they could not afford. Merchants abandoned long-distance trade routes made dangerous by bandits and pirates. The empire began to consume the productivity of its own people simply to maintain its size. And when the treasury ran short of silver, emperors reached for an easier tool: the mint. They debased the currency, mixing precious metal with cheap alloys. For a short while, this created the illusion of wealth. But the markets quickly recognized the deception. Prices rose uncontrollably. Wages lagged behind. Inflation spiraled. The once trusted Roman denarius, the backbone of Mediterranean commerce, became worthless. This loss of confidence in money marked the beginning of a deeper crisis: the collapse of monetary credibility. As coinage lost value, people turned away from markets and back toward barter. Farmers traded grain for tools or cloth instead of currency. Urban life, once vibrant and commercial, began to wither. Trade routes that had once connected 3 continents began to fail. Piracy and frontier instability cut off key supply lines. Urban centers shrank. Population shifted to the countryside. In that rural isolation, the great estates, the latifundia, emerged as self-sufficient economies. They no longer relied on imperial trade or the state for survival. This was not only an economic change, it was a social transformation, one that would define medieval Europe for centuries. By the 3rd century, Rome's economic system was trapped in a vicious cycle. High taxes led to economic contraction, contraction led to declining revenues, and declining revenues led to higher taxes still. The empire could not escape this feedback loop. It was, in modern terms, an empire caught in a fiscal death spiral. As the economy weakened, political stability vanished. From 235 to 284 CE, the empire entered the so-called crisis of the 3rd century. In those 50 years, more than 20 emperors came and went, most of them killed by their own armies. Civil wars shattered infrastructure. Trade networks disintegrated. And, crucially, public trust. The social capital that holds an economy together evaporated. Corruption filled the vacuum. Provincial governors ruled like independent kings. Officials exploited taxation for personal gain. The Senate, once a respected body of deliberation, had become a ceremonial relic. Rome's administrative machinery, bloated and inefficient, consumed far more than it produced. Meanwhile, the social order itself collapsed. The lower classes, unable to bear the tax load, fled their lands. Many became bound laborers on the estates of the wealthy. The first generation of serfs. The free citizenry, the economic backbone of the Republic and early empire, was replaced by a society stratified between vast wealth and deep poverty. In the late 3rd century, Emperor Diocletian attempted reform. He divided the empire into two halves, east and west, hoping smaller governments could manage their economies more effectively. He imposed price controls, froze wages, and attempted to standardize the currency. But these measures addressed the symptoms, not the disease. The structural problems, overextension, military dependence, and declining productivity, remained. The Western Empire, poorer and less urbanized, could not sustain itself. It depended increasingly on the richer eastern half, what would later become the Byzantine Empire. And as the West grew weaker, new pressures emerged. From the north came the Germanic tribes, Goths, Vandals, and Franks, driven by the advance of the Huns. Rome, unable to recruit or pay enough soldiers, turned to mercenaries. These men fought not for patriotism, but for gold. And when the gold ran out, they turned their swords elsewhere. In 410 CE, the unimaginable happened. Rome itself was sacked by the Visigoths. The psychological shock was profound. The eternal city, untouched for 8 centuries, was burning. And yet even then, the empire limped on, hollowed out but still breathing. By 476 CE, the end was complete. A Germanic general named Odoacer deposed the boy emperor Romulus Augustulus. The Western Roman Empire ceased to exist. What remained were fragments, successor kingdoms built upon the ruins of Roman administration. But let us be clear, Rome did not fall because of barbarians. The barbarians merely inherited a corpse. Rome fell because its economy, its fiscal, monetary, and social foundations had disintegrated long before the final invasion. Inflation, corruption, excessive taxation, and the unsustainable costs of empire consumed it from within. It was, in modern terms, a classic case of systemic economic failure. The ruins of Rome still stand today. The Colosseum, the aqueducts, the broken marble roads. They testify not only to the empire's greatness, but to its fragility. They remind us that economic discipline, trust in currency, and sustainable governance are not abstract ideals. They are the lifeblood of civilization. Rome fell coin by coin, tax by tax, decree by decree. And in that slow collapse, the ancient world gave way to the Middle Ages. The fall of Rome is not merely a story from the past. It is a mirror for every advanced society today. It warns that no power, however vast or glorious, can endure when it loses the balance between strength and solvency, ambition and stability, power and responsibility. That is the true story of Rome's economic collapse, and the enduring warning it leaves behind for all of us.